can I give you a teaser? Is that okay to do here?
Please.
Okay.
Yes,
So without
please.
being too specific, one of the things we've realized is that the product we have now is great for a lot of applications. There's a need for a different style of product. For the last 2 years, we've actually been thinking about that. And later this year, we're going to be talking about it. It's really exciting. Like it's no one is ready or expecting what we're going to say, and I'm quite excited to see the reaction.
You're listening to the AV-IT Amplifier. Each week, we'll feature voices and ideas that need to be amplified in the higher education and pro AV IT communities. This show is brought to you by higheredav.com. And now here's your host, Ryan Gray.
Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in again to the AV-IT Amplifier. If it is Wednesday, then you know we are here with new content for you, and this Wednesday is no exception. And I am excited today to talk to somebody that I think has sent me 2 emails ever in their life, and very famously sent one and waited a very long time for a reply to that, and had to track me down in another country in order to actually kind of get that going. So first, Adrian, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for, taking the plunge to come on the show. Would you please introduce yourself? Who are you and what do you do?
Absolutely. So, hi, Ryan. Good to see you again, virtual though it may be. At least this time we're not in Spain. I
That's
am
true.
I am Adrian Doughty. My title is Director of Sales at Nureva, but what I do is everything from low-level invention to I'm a recovering system designer. I like to put rooms together and try different things, and I also am a really good cook. So that's what I do.
Ooh, nice. Well, that's a good answer. So that gives us a number of places to go. But when one of the things about when people in the AV industry always tend to have some weird story of how they ended up there, and the joke is always like the story is somehow I was walking along, I tripped, I fell through a door, and then all of a sudden I worked in AV. Everyone's got some story like that. Lots of people never intended to set out that way. So, what is your history, your story into how did you end up in this industry? How did you end up, with Nureva? Why is AV worth your time and effort to spend your career doing it?
So I have not always been here. This year marks my 10th year in AV, but technically it's my 8th. So my history is I spent the first 14 years of my career working at a large IT reseller called Insight, CDW's biggest competitor. And I was moving far west. So we're a Canadian company. So imagine moving from New York to like Butte, Montana. That's the distance I moved. And as I moved west, I had an opportunity to join what at the time was actually a software services company. So it was a SaaS company. We were selling learning software. And that was really interesting because I'd never been involved on the manufacturer side before. Obviously, I had done SaaS near the end of my time at Insight. And then about 2 years into that, our CTO had a really big problem with the audio system in one of our meeting rooms. And lo and behold, he got mad and then found all the right people and invented an audio system. And that's how I ended up in AV. So even at the company I was already working at was not an AV company when I started. And Dave Martin being Dave Martin, he big brained up and recruited Nancy. They found it smart. So they had experience in the educational thing. And so the reason I stay, I like the back end of your question there. Why do you stay? The reason I stay is it's fascinating. So as a manufacturer, what you get to learn is kind of just the one aspect, but how it impacts all the other pieces of all the other parts. Whereas as the reseller, the integrator, you kind of have to maintain by necessity that higher level view. And so I love to hear the stories. I love to hear the impact. And frankly, I really just like meeting new people. I kind of always have. And so that's why I sent you one email and then I waited until we were together in Spain to remind you that I sent it, because it's a great reason to talk to each other.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Well, wow, you hit I asked like a 4-barreled question and I think you hit every part of it. So that was fantastic. So that's really interesting. So basically, like, your company changed out from underneath you a little bit. So that's actually a really interesting, like, I don't know, like there's places who go through transitions, but it usually seems it's a little more like road mapped than kind of what you experienced there. So I mean, so, all right, where does my curiosity go? First is, what did that feel like? But then second, like, was there part of it where along the line you went like, well, this isn't what I showed up here for, and I just moved this far to do it. What am I doing here?
So at first it was wildly uncomfortable because I was pretty comfortable, right? SaaS at least feels like IT. And I know the name of the podcast is the IT AV Amplifier, but it took
Mm-hmm.
me a while to really be comfortable with how those two things are blending. And frankly, that blending is only increasing, right? I don't really want to
Yeah.
spend too much time talking about the pandemic, but that blending was already happening. Then
Mm-hmm.
2020 happened and that blending was accelerated by about 10 years. There seemed to be a bit of a back off, but frankly, it really, that blending has continued. And so it felt kind of neat. I was at a point in my life where I really wanted to have a new adventure, and every day I get to keep living it. It's fun. I just have
That's
fun.
cool. That's cool. Okay, so then did you end up in this like sort of crash course of audio science? Like I have to move into this thing, and now we're going all in on audio. We've got a concept of how we want to do it, and now I got to go learn. You know, I got to go speak that language.
I had to learn, like, I was literally going to say a whole new language. I didn't know what a microphone really was. I didn't know all the different kinds. I didn't know what DB meant, right? I have a
Mm-hmm.
buddy whose initials are DB, and I'm like, why? What? This is confusing. Speaker output was another one that, frankly, I still don't understand. I'm learning it
Mm-hmm.
now. Um, so the language around audio was a whole new learning. But what I found really comforting was a lot of that language, although new, you still have to be able to relate it to the other stuff. And most importantly, how it helps the people on the other end. Like,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter what kind of microphone you're using if all they need is underwater sound. Mic's not going to work there. You need a different product.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. So what then? Like the story is sort of how to CEO has a frustrating experience and just says, "Hey, I'm going to solve this problem." So what? How? What do? And this is a kind of for me kind of question. What is that personality type like that says I have a problem, I see something, and I choose to pivot to do something about it because I think there's opportunity because that just overtook my brain. Like, what? How does that come to be?
So one of my favorite things that David Martin always
Mm-hmm.
says is you have to solve the problem for now, but you also have to be ready and willing to look over the horizon, right? And
Mm-hmm.
take some bets and make some gambles. And that's how they work at Smart. It's how they run Nureva. It's amazing to be around people who can think both what's happening tomorrow, but also say, and how does that impact 2030? Let's
Yeah.
think about that.
Yeah.
Not everyone can do it. I struggle with it. I'll be honest. I'm sort of a 2 to 3 year forward kind of guy. But it is super fun, and it often is reflected with ideas that are bad. And some of the
Yeah.
most fascinating people that I get to work with here are the fastest to come up with an idea and then discard that idea within an hour because they think about it so quickly and so differently that they'll write it down as we could think about this, but we're not going to talk about it right now. It's
Right.
a crazy environment. I encourage anyone to spend time with David Martin if they can and just listen to him talk.
Like I love. There's that part of my personality that like it has that like see opportunity, take opportunity, see
Yeah.
something, go. Like even going to Spain this last year, like I wasn't going until 3 weeks ahead of it or something like that, and it was like, here's a need, here's what's going on. I could okay, snap and go. To do that on a scale of a company sounds terrifying, but that sort of like from it's not the corporate speak but like risk tolerance and that sort of thing like can grow things that wouldn't otherwise exist.
I think I don't want to make it seem like we're crazy and out there because one of the things that balances Dave really nicely is Nancy, right? So they have been working
Mm-hmm.
together since the Smart days. They've had a super effective working relationship for, I don't want to date them. So I'm going to say a while, I'm not going to put
Yeah.
years on it, but Google when Smart started and do the math.
Yeah.
And so they are a really good two sides of the same coin. So while we can take risks, we can also be controlled and smart from a business perspective so that we don't cost ourselves opportunity going forward. And I mean, they would both tell you we've got some stuff wrong. Most of the time, though, we get it right.
Right.
It's, I'm not kidding. You got to talk to Dave and Nancy. It's wild. It's a crazy
That's awesome.
environment.
Well, and some of the evidence of that is, the where Nureva is getting to in the industry with sort of like, the number of people that how many years ago probably never heard of it to today have to like becoming a thing that like you need to kind of know about if you are on the forefront of what's going on is kind of evidence, I think, of that.
Yeah, we celebrate 9 years this year. It'll be 10 years next year. We had our first sort of coming out in 2016 as a brand. We were a company before that, but under a different name. And it's been a crazy ride over the last 9 years, right? Like, I never would have met you if not for the learning I had with some of the schools that we met during the pandemic and after, and some of the problems that we solve. And I appreciate you saying something you need to know about. But I like to also think of us as another sort of tool in the quiver. Like there's all these different products out there. And one of the things that I see in just working with people is it's not hard to find information about the products. It's understanding which one is right and when.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think like learning, like it is, when I say it's something you need to know, it is because to do our jobs well, you have to know what all the tools are. And there's places and times where it can feel like, well, everybody's kind of making the same thing. So as long as you kind of know, you're kind of up on, like if I really have a good feel of all of Extron and what's going on, I kind of have a good feel of where Crestron is too. But that's not always the case. And so knowing it is the whatever size is a weird thing, but like the medium, the size, or the people that specialize on things that, like you said, provide a tool that otherwise, that if you don't know about, if you don't have that in your pocket when it's the right solution, you're not actually able to put forth the best thing. So what is that tool that you guys have for people that, that is, and how is it different than, sort of the, wow, this is fun. I'll throw a manufacturer. This is a Hudley Crew system in here, which is kind of cool.
Oh,
but
we
it
have one.
doesn't always, yeah, exactly. But it doesn't always know what to do with only one person when I sit here. So this is, sorry for everybody watching. That was a fun zoom out.
It's not designed for one person, they would tell you, but we do a lot with Hudley. So what do we do that's different so one, while we are using microphones that people have heard about before, omnidirectional microphones, we have a whole whack of patents that are ours all over the world that incorporate into what is a completely different way of doing microphone pickup in large and really large spaces. So we take the mathematical intersection of any two of those physical elements in a room up to 30 by 30 with one bar or 35 by 55 for two. We just turn that mic on. So if I'm talking in a room and I'm facing away from our unit and I'm talking into a glass wall, you can still hear me. I could be under a table and you could still hear me. We do full room pickup. That is our specialty. And the thing that sets us apart, other than those patents, which we bundle up under the Microphone Mist banner, is all of the power we have in there. So fully auto calibrating, no programming required, but we do have extendable APIs, open APIs available. So if you are using, Extron, Crestron, you can use those systems and integrate it into what you do. We spend a lot of time making sure that we are a solution that is flexible and usable, right? Easy to deploy, use, and manage is how we say it. And on the deploy side, we spend a ton of time working with companies like Hudley, like Logitech, like Crestron and Extron to make sure that we can fit into those spaces and not disrupt the user experience that's being delivered.
So I love the advancement that has come in audio pickup for so many things has just been fantastic over the past couple of years, and to have multiple ways of doing it is awesome. So with that as sort of like you said, packaging under the Microphone Mist, and I've actually I've got one of your shirts from Infocom last year that has Microphone Mist on it, and I love it because it's such a visual thing of just like, imagine a space that's misted with pickup, and we're doing this, that sort of thing, which is exciting. But one of the things I heard at ISE this year was in relation to Nureva is it's a whole lot easier to hang a picture on a wall than a chandelier on a ceiling. So how does that relate, into how you guys have gone about, the physical products that you've put this technology into?
So yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, our systems are wall mounted, and we do that intentionally. Our initial design was done in a way that we use the wall as part of the math, right? So it functions as a boundary, right? Partial boundary mic, and we don't need to get into that. And we talk to a lot of folks who are looking for something that can be externally mounted because either it has to be, or they want it to be, or, and this is the most common reason, they don't have the trained staff to get into the ceiling, to run all that cable. In some places, California, and most recently I talked about this, they can't because of local rules and requirements and labor shortages. So we give a nice, simple way to mount a system. So it can be, in the box, on the floor, to on the wall and in a call in as little as an hour. And some people really appreciate that. There are folks like, look, I don't think this will be a surprise to any of your audience. We are all too busy. And sometimes you need something that can deliver similar performance to those big installed systems without all of that programming and time. And to my previous point, it's not the perfect product all the time, but it's a really good tool in those spaces that need to be outfitted, work well, and that you want full room pickup.
Yeah. And so talking about then spaces, obviously this is a product that like your people are probably thinking conference rooms, you're thinking other but so, and then, as you're, looking at sales, looking at markets, obviously, how do you balance out, like, where is the interest? Like, obviously, there's going to be corporate and other areas. You're working in higher ed for sure. Where have you found kind of the first footholds to come in, and what are you working on in terms of like developing out the market that you think this is the right tool for?
So one of the biggest driving factors right now is higher ed, right? And higher ed never really went, we'll call it full remote, right? It was always kind of half remote for most of the higher ed people we speak with. But as more and more people come back, what we're seeing is that offering of a hybrid option is still super common because it's a good recruiting tool, right? Letting a student know you can be in here or not at your decision means you now have to outfit a room for audio. You can't predict where humans are going to sit. And a lot of times it's a flexible room, right? Not only can you not predict where they're going to sit, but you can't necessarily predict how the rooms are going to be used either. So by delivering full room pickup and automatic calibration, a person who has to be the user of that room, and for the sake of argument, we'll say it's the professor who's got to plug their laptop in and hit go. They don't want to point mics or hit settings. They just want to go. And so we can help them do that. So that's one, is that flexible. And then the second one is the return to office push, right? So a lot of companies are coming back sort of 2-3 days, and we're seeing both in large and small spaces, there's a whole lot more in-person collaboration, and the rooms weren't designed for it, right? They've got a mic at the front, which is good as long as everybody is sitting at a table, still staring forward, taking their turns to talk. What we do is we give them the ability to, go back to or start if they're new into collaboration, which is honestly more common than you might think. There's a whole lot of people who are new into collaboration. But, put that sticky on the window, right on that whiteboard at the back of the room. Have a pillow fort meeting because you're cool and you work at a neat company. We can support the remote audio experience for that because there's a near 100% chance right now that there's a remote attendee in your meeting, and that doesn't matter what industry you're in.
Yeah, no, I love that idea. And it really goes to that idea of, high tech fading into the background. We talk in AV a lot, right? That like when our technology is part of the conversation of the user, we've done something wrong. It is how our technology fades into the background and the purpose that they're there for moves to the forefront. I'll do a small thing on that, which because it's active here, is we just went over here at Yavapai College with our technology advisory committee results from our EDUCAUSE student survey. And there's a whole section of that survey that is about, hybrid learning and hybrid class structure and the student preference in there. And the student voice for, we want to have the option to be in person. We want to have the option to be synchronous and remote. And we want to have the option to hear and listen, you know what I'm saying, to participate after the fact, if we had to miss for some reason, could not be screaming louder out of student base. And I am one of those for instructors to go like, that means our job is to help you be able to provide that, but not make it take up your mental thought process of what has to happen. If we're going to do this well, you're going to walk in and you're going to teach what you teach. And to your point also is we very much would want the rooms not to be set up the same way every time.
Yeah.
We want things to be flexible. We want you to be doing discussion when it makes sense, and small groups when it makes sense, and lecturing when it makes sense, and using all of that. So a technology that is, to your point, like purpose-built has a place in purpose-built uses. But man, the future of what happens in higher ed classrooms should be very flexible, meaning we need, in our level, we need technologies that, to that point, adapt quickly, do something, pick up everywhere, and are there saying like, you go do whatever it is you need to do in here, and we got you from a capture and recording it, an audio video standpoint. It's just awesome. What we can do with that these days is just so much better than it used to be.
And that desire for your students to choose, if it's any consolation, it's the same here. We're not a higher ed environment, right? We're a company, but a lot of our employees, we do have a return to office, but we did not set a company-wide, you've got to be here Tuesday to Thursday. Most folks are free to choose when they come and go with minimum expectation, and more people choose to come in more days than they are required to. So but what we really pride ourselves in offering is that choice, and I don't think that's going away anytime soon.
And it doesn't, like, all of the individual people's feelings or things aside, like the ability for people to participate in human activities regardless of location sets things apart a little bit. It really does. That flexibility allows for things that wouldn't happen otherwise. And reducing that as a barrier, everybody knows we can. So making sure that experience is as human as possible, weighs in there. And the other thing for like me at a community college where we say like, our average student age right now is something like 33. But it's actually not that many 33-year-olds. We have a lot of traditional age, but you can have 40 and otherwise. You have a lot of working adults, and the same goes for universities who are targeting master's programs and other things at working adults. Is we have to meet students where they are. And so if you're a parent and your kid gets sick, and that means you miss class, and that was the only place and time you could interact with that content, was that hour and a half that you were there, like that does not fit the world we're working towards. So,
and that model is doesn't exist, right? Like Netflix kind of kicked it off. All of streaming has conditioned us to expecting to be able that we can access content later on our schedule. Right. It's not as good. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what we're seeing is people have to watch a video like 2-3 times to sort of internalize or get the same information if they had been in the room, but that the option exists and can support that learning and be there, I think is a net benefit. And
what we've seen actually, the interesting part there is like when there, because this goes by class. So when a class, an instructor, or even things that are adjunct led that have really great design to them, and there's good student engagement, students want to be there. They want to be there live. And then, but when they miss, they have this option. And most of the activity, more of the activity comes from reviewing later. I'm preparing for an exam, or I'm doing something now. I have this back catalog of information that's in there. And the other thing that has come to the forefront that's been interesting is for issues of equity and other things like that. So students who may have, a disability of some type or that sort of thing, if you know that the recording of the class is available and the transcript is going to be available to you afterwards, now, whether it's engagement, if I have a disability where if there's something I think I didn't hear right, I don't have to stop class to do it. Or while I'm in class, I can be fully engaged in it, knowing that my need to take copious notes because that's the only way. Sorry, you've got me geeked out on this because I think it's
sorry.
You know what I'm saying? I think it is such a thing in higher ed now of like really turning from that old the traditional model of sage on the stage and getting to the point that really having student driven decision making and technologies like what you build let me go into academic master plan meetings with yeses in my pockets instead of that's a problem. You know what I'm saying? Like
Absolutely.
really,
and then you look over the horizon,
to,
right? At putting the pieces together, and you look at, I mean, I know AI controversial, but give me one statement about AI. You look at Microsoft's Copilot integration, where if you register your voice to their system, it knows that it is you speaking. Mm-hmm. Imagine the power of that in a room of 35 people, being able to pull out not just generalized feedback from a recording, but the specific person who said it, and being able to go and talk to that person about their specific feedback in detail. Like that used well, I think it's awesome. I'm aware of we'll just call it the societal issues around it, but I do think there is power and goodness in putting some of these new pieces of gear together and seeing where it can take us.
Yeah. And in higher ed, like to go again, we got totally off track, which is perfect. I love it because I think, this is exactly why I love doing this, because we get to talk about these things, but like there's, in higher ed and other places, the concern, like creating generative AI pools of information, internal training, not using, we don't want whatever the internet says is true. We want to protect that, create that. Well, you know what you get if you have a recording of all of your classes all the time over a couple of years. You've got a giant data lake of locally curated information to train AIs on in a way that, is anonymous of students, protects privacy and that sort of thing, that like, you've got, anyways, to that eye to the future then, on that front. So Nureva, obviously, you've come in and I'll talk about in higher ed, you've got devices that have gone through the HETMA approved program. They've got white papers attached and like they've been tested in our environments. And I think there's been more and more engagement. What are you looking at now then, if you, like you said, more of a 2-3 year person? Because I'm the same way. Asking for a 5-year plan these days seems impossible because there's too much volatility in the world. But in terms of the company, what you guys are offering, and then sort of your strategy to connect that with people, what are you working on?
So without being too specific, can I give you a teaser? Is that okay to do here? Okay.
Yes. Please.
So without being too specific, one of the things we've realized is that the product we have now is great for a lot of applications, but there's I don't want to say parallel. There's a need for a different style of product, similar to what we do, but kind of in its own lane. And so over the last, we talk about looking over the horizon, for the last 2 years, we've actually been thinking about that. And later this year, we're going to be talking about it. Okay. So it's not, I don't want to say it's like the next generation. It's a new generation. It's something different. If I could nerd out and quote Neil deGrasse Tyson for a second, people always ask him about evolution, and he has a great answer on Twitter, right? Which came first, the chicken or the egg? And the answer is the egg, from something that wasn't a chicken. That's what he says.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're kind of doing the same thing. So we're evolving, but from something that is not necessarily related. And it's really exciting. Like it's no one is ready or expecting what we're going to say. And I'm quite excited to see the reaction.
Okay. All right. So is this a Infocom time frame?
It'll be right before Infocom. We'll put a press release out that kind of is a pre-announcement. And at Infocom, we're looking at different ways to have people experience and see it. None of this is ironed out yet because Infocom is still 3 months away, but it's 3 months minus a day as of today, right?
Yeah, exactly. Regardless, that clock always seems long from ISE to Infocom, but man, does it go fast.
It's not.
Okay, so well, let's put that out there, which sounds like, your guys' booth is going to be a must-see, at Infocom for this. And I love that analogy of like, it's not about upgrading the thing we already have, but somehow like what you're describing is rethinking how we deploy this technology to do something new. Like, this is very exciting.
And it's driven by feedback. So one of the things our team is really good at is speaking with and listening to customers. We obviously have our own ideas, right? We want to make sure that we are bringing our own ideas to the table, but we spend a lot of time listening to current users, people who have told us no are some of our favorite people to talk to. So why didn't that work for you? What did we miss? What would have made it work? And they're just as valuable as the people who have said yes. So we love to gather that feedback. And then, like I said, we have a very strong team, some of whom who have been in this industry like forever, who are really good at interpreting that voice of client and turning it into solutions. And they've taught me how to do that, which is a lot of fun. So why you and I get along so well, we can nerd out about anything. It's because I now have I have that curiosity, which they have given to me. They've given me the tools to listen without talking.
Nice. That's awesome. Okay. Well, then on that front, how would people find and get connected to you? How could they make sure, one, they're up on what Nureva is coming out, or if they want to find something to geek out with you about, what's the best way to find and connect with you?
So if they want to geek out with me, you can just email, sales@nureva.com. All the team will forward it to me if it's got my name in it. So go ahead. If you want to talk about the 10 gig SFPs I just put in my server and my brand new MikroTik switch, I'm your guy. If you want to talk about audio, we could talk about that too. If you want to talk about Nureva, we're all over socials, right? LinkedIn, X. I think we're still on Facebook. So we're findable, and that's where we'll put that out mostly there. And then there'll be, your standard press releases and emails, but that's not where the world. And YouTube, we're doing a lot on YouTube now too, which is fun.
What is the sort of what are the sort of things you're putting out on YouTube? How are you using that platform?
So we have a whole support site, but right now we're doing a bunch of like technical how-to videos with our products specialist, James Peters. He goes out and he actually does a full walkthrough of things we're doing, advanced setups like voice amplification, divisible rooms. We're still kind of playing with it. We've done install guides, silly videos of me, and a lot of our videos are actual people who work here, not actors. Yeah. So we recruit people and just throw them out on YouTube and have a good time with it.
Nice. Well, that sounds good. Like I said, the spirit of the company has that feel to it. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like, and man, these days, so many people, when you need an answer, you go to YouTube and find somebody with a video on it. So that's awesome. Well, half an hour goes by so fast. So thank you for joining us and talking and geeking out with me about this, because I really do, I appreciate you the way you approach what's going on in the AV industry. And it was good to talk with you today. I appreciate your time.
Thanks. Good to talk to you.
Thank you for listening to the AV IT Amplifier. Join us again for next week's episode when we'll welcome a new guest who you'll want to hear from. We promise. Your host has been Ryan Gray. He's on the tweeters at Ryan_A_Gray, or find him on LinkedIn to connect. Please subscribe and give the show a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. This show is brought to you by HigherEdAV.com. The views expressed here are not necessarily those of our respective institutions, employers, or sponsors. Everyone hang in there, go easy, and we'll be back next week.